Let's introduce the next beer. All right, here we go. And I'm going to tell you right now, we have been enjoying Masthead frequently over the last year.
Yes.
Is that right, Gumby?
It is. It's right and really wrong. All right, this beer is called Unbounded Principles Belgian Quad. It is 10.3%. It is a dark yet delicious Belgian-style Christmas ale, it says. I didn't realize that. That is a product of a high level of alchemy skill. There's your alchemist.
I still don't know what he's talking about.
It's like wizardry, isn't it?
It's sorcery in a cup.
So, yeah.
All right.
You guys ready?
Yep.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's delicious. I like it. It's definitely a little stronger.
Yeah, there's the bite I was talking about.
Yeah, that's definitely has the bite. Not IPA bite, but it definitely has a bite.
Well, it's 10% bite.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it's real sweet. Like,
Yeah.
must be honey in it or something. Sorry, vegans.
Is honey bad?
Yeah, and I will say I do not support veganism at all. I'll say that right now.
Oh.
For many reasons, but mostly just because it's a label without any sort of.
What do you have against vegans?
You think it's a fad mostly? Is
So
that
are
why?
you a vegan hater? Or is it...
I am not a. I have friends that are vegans, but I don't. I think they're wrong. I honestly, because you can't just say I will not touch or consume any animal products just because I'm a vegan. I think like what Stephanie says, the one thing I agree with is you have to be in alignment with things. So if you just blindly say I'm going to adopt this label where you don't consume honey, we'll use honey as an example. Well, bees are constantly leaving their hives. They outgrow their hives. They're leaving their hives. What does it matter if you're consuming this honey? Yes, from an economical standpoint, maybe you don't believe in the farming of honey, but to label it wrong because you're vegan, I don't know. I think it's just too much. Like, I think you should evaluate all your, what you're consuming and constantly be in alignment. And I think not to go too far into it, but like the book of Daniel, they were vegetarians, and the Bible does talk about certain people should not eat meat. And it also talks about some people do eat meat. So I think we have to embrace differences, but I don't think you should just say, no, you can't even, let's say.
We're talking about embracing differences, but then you also just said veganism is wrong.
Oh! Touche.
But no, okay,
beer,
so I
George.
still
Give me
stand
your
by.
beer.
I still. Damn it.
It's a 10%.
I thought you became more agreeable when you had the 10%.
Oh, okay.
No, I stand behind my statement that veganism is wrong just because they don't evaluate everything. No, if God said...
I think that's unfair. I think that's a stereotype. You're kind of umbrellaing like every vegan, like this stereotypical crazy left-wing YouTube video person. I don't think they're all that way. I think there's a lot of educated vegans that make that decision on the basis that you're kind of leaning towards right now.
Well, I'm going by, like, my recent friend who turned vegan. He went from meat eater to vegetarian to vegan. And I would ask her these questions, why wouldn't you consume honey? Well, I can't. I'm a vegan. Oh. Is that really... And
no principle behind it.
Right, and so I say that label alone, and it's closed-minded. Everybody has flaws.
Some people will say, I choose not to eat animals because I just don't want to eat other sentient beings.
I can agree with that.
Okay,
right.
That's fair. Like, you don't want to eat sentient beings. Okay.
My daughter's that way. Yeah.
Like, one area where I'm at, I used to live in Alaska, right? Okay, so there's areas you can't grow stuff. Airplanes can't come in. There's no grocery store. So, you have to live off the land. And a lot of the land, there are animals. So cases like that, or the Native Americans, when they hunt bison, they eat, there's a ceremony around it. They use everything. And they have, that's their main source, So it's kind of like, well, are we to judge these people because they can't grow, fruits and vegetables, and they don't have, these things. They have to rely on the land. And so for them, that's survival. So I put survival, if that's literally all you have to eat, or that's the main source of your nutrition, then, I'm not, because there's areas where they just can't grow stuff.
Right.
Hey, Stephanie, I think what you're saying there is from a different perspective. As far as some others, my impression what Mike was saying, people want to take a stand with no principles behind it. Or maybe it's a trendy thing to do. But the way you've laid out the information to me, I've totally underestimated our podcast tonight. I truly did. And it's a breakdown in every aspect of it. This is why this is. This is why that is. And when you take all that in consideration, and depending on what route you plan on going, it's truly justified. It's scary.
Yeah,
it's scary.
Yeah, and we've just touched the tip.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I could go on for hours, like, on stuff, but this is just, again, like some basic stuff. And again, like you, I went, when I started learning about the factory farm system, like, I had to take breaks because I'm like, what? Like, what is this happening? And then over time, it just starts to not make any logical sense, especially when, like, a lot of us, we have access to grocery stores and restaurants.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? We can cook, we can shop, or if we have more money, we can have people make it for us.
Yeah.
Or we have delivery systems now, right? There are plant-based, delivery systems, and I always tried to focus too on plant-based versus vegan, because again, vegan has a lot of emotion tied to that word, and a lot of people get very polarized around
Mike?
it.
Mike?
Just a little.
Yeah, but when you say plant-based, right, that focuses more on the diet,
Yeah.
like the food, and not like a culture or philosophy, or for some reason, for some people, it's like a religion to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Or like the Amazing Impossible Burger.
What's the Amazing Impossible Burger?
Oh, the Impossible Burger is incredible. It's amazing.
Okay, so I have a question. So, what would be the Christian point of view on cultured meat? So now we're making meat from the DNA of animals, right? So no slaughters involved, and you only need you just do a little biopsy of a cow, and then you could produce like hundreds of pounds of meat. But what is now that gets into the area of like, well, is this natural or not? And what is, because, well, it came from an animal, but a lot of science was also involved in now producing, because this is the path we're going on, right? Because as we grow to 10, 11 billion people on the planet, the factory farm system cannot sustain, because of space.
I agree with that, and I can tell you which way it's going to go, just like it's always gone. So you're going to have the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox, and they're going to say, "Hey, you know what? This is actually a really good idea. I think humankind is evolving to a good state in this." And then you're going to have the evangelicals. They're going to say, "Nah, not natural."
Well, what if it starts making money though? The big, big pharma and stuff can make money off of it.
It's going to be a shift. I guarantee you. I could be wrong, but I would put money on it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Aaron, from a theological point of view in the Old Testament, because there's this debate back and forth that God promotes or does not promote the eating of meat. But he did allow, after the flood, because there was no plant-based food left, to eat meat, correct?
Well,
for a time.
I mean, there was only two of every animal, so...
well,
what did?
Yeah, but in 6 weeks.
I mean, what's he supposed to do? Wait 6 weeks?
But in 6 weeks, you can.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Hold on.
I
think we're forgetting that like the first 10 chapters are written polemically.
Is a lie.
Yes.
They're written polemically. It's
we're forgetting that the first 6 chapters is all BS. I know that makes sense.
No,
the 10%.
Literally, the first 10 chapters are written polemically. They're written as C.S. Lewis would say, they're written as true myth. Okay, so it's not to say that events of the time didn't happen, because the Akkadians, Canaanites, Sumerians, all of them have the same stories. However, it reflects a polemical story.
Yeah.
It doesn't reflect a historical story.
I'm not saying that's a whole other debate, George, if it's true or not. That's not even what I'm asking. What I'm saying is,
George,
we have certain behaviors in certain parts of our Christian culture that tie back to something. So where do these thoughts, these behaviors come from, and is it justified? So, did God allow
probably Stone Age
the eating of meat?
I don't think that it's something that God did or did not allow. I think it's something that we came from as a species that started rather primitively and then up to the modern age. I think that it's something that we derive culturally from a very old system. I don't think it has anything to do with what God did or did not allow. I think it's
I wish I had the verses, because I know he did give specific commands after the flood that there was to be different types of
clean and unclean,
of meat that could be eaten,
which is all Levitical.
But then,
kosher.
When you look at Moses, who was trapped and who needed food for his people, it wasn't meat that was provided.
Manna.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
is bread.
Foul.
But
that was later. That was after they whined and moaned.
But that's where I was going. But the people complained because they had tasted meat and then they wanted wings.
Right. Mike.
I would be complaining.
Mike. They were tired of being vegan. Mike.
And then meat consumption at that time was totally different from what it is now, though.
But then God got mad at the people for whining and complaining, and George, you'll love that part after.
Yeah,
what
Mike.
did they do?
He got mad at them for eating the meat, Mike.
No, then they had too much meat, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's too much meat."
So they're like Americans. Then
I believe God wanted to smite them at that point.
What did he do? Kill them all? Rape their children? What did he do?
Oh my gosh, I am taking your beer from you.
That was a 10%, wasn't it?
Jeez.
Are you guys gonna leave me in the dark? I'm assuming he burnt everyone to the ground.
No. Yeah, well, we're gonna do Genesis on a different podcast, so let's move on.
Oh, okay.
So Stephanie,
Stephanie.
If you could push a button right now and say everybody becomes a vegetarian, would you push that button?
No.
And why not?
Because, like I mentioned, it's a process, and I think that people have to come into this when they are ready, and because when you force things, it just doesn't. Just look at simply diets to lose weight. Why do they always fail? Because you're forced to do something. You're like, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, I got to do this. And then what happens? Deprivation sets in. You're like, I can't have this, and then your mind starts playing, and then you stop. Like New Year's resolutions. Statistically, 80% of people stop their New Year's resolutions at day 21.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't even make it. We can't even make it 30 days, right? So just for everyone to go, even just vegetarian, right? You could still keep your cheese and your eggs, but for some people, because it's not just dietary, it's social, it's economic. Yeah. It's all this stuff. So I believe in a process that you come, because once you get to that point, you see the world differently, you see food differently, and you just can't go back anymore. But like I said, it took me 7 years to get to this point. Right. And even now, a couple weeks ago, I was somewhere and I smelled barbecue. And I was like, oh, wow, that smells really good.
Must be in Cleveland.
And then it's reptile brain starts to take over. And remember. And then I go, oh, wait a minute. No, that's the burning flesh of an animal. And so I can't, and now, I didn't look, I didn't look at it this way before, but now when I'm at Whole Foods and I walk by the meat place, I don't see food anymore. I see body parts.
Yeah. You know what helps with that? Is walking by a burning car. And I'm not being mean. When you walk by, because I don't know how many people have driven by a burning car where somebody has actually died in the freeway.
Oh my gosh, are we really going there? And you guys are yelling at me.
Hold on.
All right.
That's a little dark,
Let's
man.
go. Let's go.
Hold on. What I'm saying is,
take me on this adventure.
There's gonna be bacon involved.
There actually is a smell of burning meat, and I hate to say that like that, but it's true.
Okay, George, take Aaron's beer.
I'm taking his beer.
And it's hard to explain. You have to experience it. Unfortunately, I have.
You're cut off to.
Yes. We'll take your word.
Unfortunately, I have. But there actually is that smell, and it's not that much different from barbecue. Obviously, there's not the sauce.
Makes sense while you're pescatarian now.
There's not the sauce, but when you drive by and you do smell the burning person within there, and it's a horrible smell.
Oh gosh!
But
Are we still on this? You're
gonna finish. Help us, Stephanie. Help us.
Now that
segue into the fish hatchery.
More statistics to show.
Okay, so now they've offended everybody. Move on.
Well, if I can just
actually, here's something interesting. Another perspective thing, which someone brought up a week ago. So there's a lot of people who are like, they say they're animal lovers, right? They're like, I love my dogs and cats, and I'm against the puppy mills and stuff, and they still eat meat. And so this one vegan guy, and again, like I was listening to him, and it made sense. So if you love dogs and cats, remember I mentioned they're the 1%, the animal population.
Love dogs.
If you love dogs and cats, but you eat, you're okay eating cows and pigs, then you're not actually an animal lover, you're a pet lover. Because if you're an animal lover, you love all animals equally. But if you look at, why do...
Very good point.
Pigs are actually smarter than dogs. So if we look at the intelligence ladder, then we should be eating dogs instead of pigs.
Oh. Well, I've actually been... No.
Yeah, right? So, but then if you differentiate, we can eat... Some animals are okay to eat and not others, then you're getting into the isms now of what animals are worthy and which ones are not, because we've deemed them food. So really, the ones we don't eat are our pets.
It's very selective.
Or a pet lover.
Yeah, but there's no meat on a dog.
Versus an animal lover. If you're a true animal lover and you see them as fellow sentient beings, you won't eat any of them.
That's true.
Right. That's a good point.
That's a great point. It's quite selective.
Well, I don't know. I would say I enjoy eating meat, but I try to eat it responsibly. Stephanie, I think you've been very communicative of that. You're not just pushing everybody to stop, and I liked your answer. But what do you think about if you did push a button? Don't you think there would be overpopulation of animals and things like that if everybody stopped?
So no, what we do, we just start the culling process. So all these factory farms they just stop breeding. So we just go through the current inventory until it's empty, but you start at a point. It's kind of like with fossil fuels with cars. We stop selling cars that are run on gasoline, and we transition into the electrical cars and stuff, right? But the way we remove, we don't just remove all the gas cars because people just can't. We do this transition period. So that's what we do. If we just push a button, then what will we do is I would start with the factory farm system, because that's the point where, that's the system causing the most destruction, right? So I tell people, if you want to still eat meat, again, buy it from your local farmers who are raising their, you can actually go and see the cows and the pigs and the chickens, and they are literally running around like the happy cows and chickens you see on all the marketing ads, right? Go there or some people, here in California, they'll go in with farms. You can get a group of people and buy a cow, right? And then when it gets to slaughter, and then you guys all share that one cow, but you know where the cow has been, you know what it's been eating, and then you guys can share it, right?
That's crazy, because it's like you're emotionally attached to it almost at that point. That's
they don't tell you it.
I don't want to know.
They tell you its name. They give you a picture of its family.
Yeah. They actually.
I don't know. Can we kill it?
I become the godfather of the guy. I don't want to do that. I don't want to know. I just want to eat it.
I know. You hear the doorbell ring, and it's like a baby cow, and he has nowhere to go. And you Sorry, Stephanie. It's a 10% beer. I apologize.
I'm going to take my beer.
Right.
That's the whole difference.
Was telling me there's these studies that when people actually raise cows, they don't give them names for that reason.
Yeah,
the
it makes
emotional
sense.
disconnect.
Yeah, they just have a number tagged to their ear, and then okay, that's cow number 38, and then we'll just put it in the trailer, and off it goes. By number 38, right? We don't name it. We don't give it a name, because then it becomes a sentient being to us.
I think that's the biggest disconnect, though, if you think about it, because if the biggest disconnect between us and that being is just us not naming it,
we should go to all the factories and start naming the cows? Is that where you're getting at?
Right,
Yes, there we go.
Right.
And then, like, when you buy it, you gotta be like, yeah, this was
Chuck.
Ranger Bob or whatever the cow's name. I don't know.
I mean, think about it.
We don't even call beef cow. We eat beef, not cow.
Right. Even
we eat pork, not pig.
You're right. And I think there is a point when you're growing up where you've you finally learn what meat is what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I never thought of it that way. That's interesting.
Well, my kids, my kids, the first time I said, "Well, beef is a cow," they're like, "Wait, what?"
It comes from where?
Right.
Yeah.
And we have a disconnect, and we're raised with that disconnect.
Yeah.
You know?
That I think is a big stem. So I took my sons to a father-son retreat this past summer, and one of the activities was to kill your own chicken, basically, and eat it. So on there, sorry, Steph. But so you basically you had to do it as if you lived in Africa, because there were missionaries in Africa leading this, and no one wanted to do it, but I thought it was important because I need my sons to know the choice that they're making. So I choose. Oh, sorry. Did I just make her leave?
No.
So I choose to eat meat responsibly, but I needed them to know. And if they chose after doing that they didn't want to eat chicken or meat anymore, I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. They have to live with the consequence. And when I see 2 chicken breasts on a plate or something, I realize that's a whole chicken. Right. So if I cook 4, that's 2 chicken.
Right.
like I want to make sure I'm not overdoing it. You know what I mean? And I think sourcing locally and stuff. So I do think we shouldn't disconnect. We should have that, what's on your plate was sacrificed for you. You have to appreciate it, and that way you'll reduce the amount you eat.
Yeah.
And
so,
you know the consequence.
Tell me more about this chicken.
I don't know if it's pretty R-rated.
I mean, Juice already told a story about a human body being burnt in a car.
I know.
What?
We can only go up.
Yeah.
It can only get better.
It's definitely not as bad as a human burning flesh, but it is pretty gruesome. I mean, you don't have a blade spinning around, so it is not. You do it as quick as possible, And so when I was growing up,
the chicken let you pick it up? Was it like being your friend?
No, it ran.
Okay, good. So he knew at least.
Right.
He had a fighting chance.
Yeah, right. He could have been faster than you. Survival of the fittest.
He was a little slow.
You're Ranger material. You realize that, don't you?
I'm ready.
Hey, you're Ranger material.
So, but I think reconnecting.
How did the kids react after doing? I mean, what was their experience after?
So within 45 minutes over an open fire, you're getting ready to eat this chicken, and my oldest son, he was a little squeamish. He was sort of like, I don't know if I want to. I said, you don't have to. But he did, and he said it was the best chicken he ever had. I honestly thought it ended up being a rooster. It was tough. So, but again, it was that reconnection with the consequence of what you're doing that makes me not take for granted of, the depth of what I'm doing here, what something sacrifices life. So sort of like the Native Americans, like you were saying, how they would almost have a ceremony around it. Well, that's really what it felt like. I get emotional about it a little bit. And I do think, that's really what we may pray over our food, but honestly, as Americans, our prayer sucks. It's a habit. I honestly think I could live on Cheetos if I could really say, God, thank you so much for these Cheetos, but you can't. You have to be honest with yourself. And so if you're praying over your food, it has to be an honest prayer too.
If it's a created, if we're going back biblically, okay, and God created the animal, it has a being. I don't know what else to call it, right? Mm-hmm. It has it is created, right?
Hebrew would say nefesh.
So my question is, yes, when we kill those animals here on it, and I'm talking about the way she described it on a mass scale in America. And you brought up, I know you don't want to get into the moral side of it, but you did mention spiritual side of it. If these animals feel fear right before they're slaughtered, is there a connect to us eating that and us becoming more violent as a society? Have you done any studies with the terms of eating meat and violence?
So Stephanie, maybe this is a good time.
Sorry.
I was gonna say maybe this is a good time for you to bring up the white elephant. I'm sorry,
So-
the white cow. White cow.
Oh. Wait, I was gonna say one thing about what was the last thing that you said? I had a.
People being violent.
Is there any direct kind of studies between eating meat from cows that are killed the way that we kill them on a mass scale, and people who are, society that's inherently violent?
That I don't know of, but there are studies that linking the violence of factory farm workers.
Mm.
So the longer that you work in a factory farm, they have like, especially these guys who are actually in the front lines, right? Like with pigs and chickens, they stun them first, and pigs, and then they go to the vat of boiling water, and sometimes they're still alive, right? So they got to kill these pigs. Well, yeah, it's like. So imagine doing that job every day, and you're hearing the sound, and you're got the smell. So there are studies on the psychological impact of working in slaughterhouses on these men, and they're primarily men. And they come and they have the highest rates of domestic abuse, suicide, alcoholism, and drug abuse, right? So when we talk about the opioid problem, which again is primarily in the poor red states, where again, there's a lot of those jobs that they have are working in these factory farms and slaughterhouses. Wow. So there are many studies on that. In fact, there's a study on even so how do we and the turnover rate is very high, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the workers are undocumented as well, because how many Americans are going to want to be working in a slaughterhouse, right? Yeah. Like, hey, we got plenty of jobs, so your job is to kill pigs all day, right? Clean up the blood and do all, most Americans will be like, oh, no, I'll just eat my bacon. I'm not. But there are a lot of jobs available in the factory farm system. But so there are studies on that. But in terms of studies on do we become more violent or whatever, the more we eat meat raised in violent environments. Yeah. For that, I would say, I don't know, let's look at some common sense here, right? If you believe everything is energy, like in basic science, everything is energy. Mm-hmm. So you're eating the energy of this animal, how it was raised, what it's fed, and then you're putting that energy into your body. Yeah. I mean, and then it adds up over time. It's going to impact you in some form of way. Whether you're conscious of it or not is another thing. But again, if everything is energy, that energy is now in your body. And, another thing I saw was, this guy asked, he just asked a question, again, not whether eating meat is morally right or not. He's like, so if the last thing that your food did was cry for mercy for its life, is that healthy? Whoa. So I'm like, oh no. That's good. Right? Because you're like, animals cry. So if the chicken, if you saw the chicken cry tears, right when you had its neck in your hands, and you saw the tears,
didn't stop him.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you see the cow. I was like, it's gonna go right. You see the cows crying tears. That also they are emotional. They feel pain, and they also are begging for mercy for their life. So it's not whether it's right or wrong. Do you consider that healthy?
All right.
So I mean, that's so those are things that got me thinking about stuff. I'm like, no, I can't. So that goes to the story of the white cow. So we have 2 months out of the year we have a local farmer. We have some hills and area they grow a lot of plants and stuff. So a local farmer works with the city, and they come and be nature's lawnmower in our area. But they can get pretty close to the roads, and so you can get close enough to see them, right, and to touch them, and even to touch them if you're brave. But so they're usually all brown cows, but there's this one white cow that started coming 3 years ago. And so I was just fascinated with this one white cow in a herd of 30 cows, right? And so I named her Ella, because I thought she was enchanting, this white cow among all these, brown cow. So I named her Ella, and so I go running, and I'd say, oh, "Hi, Ella, how you doing?" Right? You know, she's just eating her food, and, you know. So I started again getting emotionally attached to Ella because I'd see her roaming, and I related to her because I commonly feel like I'm the odd person in the group, right? I don't fit in, and I'm different. I stand out, and so that's why I bonded with Ella. And so one of the things that I told myself, okay, if I'm going to eat meat or beef, I have to be able to look Ella in the eye and say, I need you to die so I can have protein. Okay, I had to look her in the eyes, and I was like, I can't look her in the face and tell her, you need to die so I can have some protein. I'm like, I'm just going to have to figure out how to get protein somewhere else because I just can't do that. So then, during my research on factory farming, I came across, you go on YouTube and you get lost in videos, right? So I found this one video of a medical doctor who is wanting, because, doctors are not taught nutrition. So this doctor decided she wanted to learn not only nutrition, but, the food system and meat. So she had a friend who actually, like her uncle or something, owned a local slaughterhouse. Now, this is a humane slaughterhouse, okay? So this goes into the whole thing about like humane meat. So humane meat is humanely slaughtered. So she goes and she asked them, like, can I film? And they were like, yeah, it's totally fine. So she noticed this area, there was one white cow that they separated from the other cows because she was too rowdy. And so she went over to the white cow and at first the cow was afraid of her, but then like over a few hours that she spent with this cow, the cow started to calm down, but then also started to like her. She's like, oh, you're a nice human. You're petting me. You're spending time with me, and calmed her down. And then the rest of the animals, I mean, they're outside of the slaughterhouse, but they're freaking out, right? And it's like, well, why are they freaking out? Like, if they're not intelligent or don't feel anything, like, maybe they literally smell the death because they're like, okay, that is not a good door. Because someone comes in and someone comes out. Like, and then they didn't get to her that day, so the doctor came back, and she was with her, and the cow was like happy to see her. It's like, oh, it's my human, I'm like so happy to see her. And then it was her turn to go into the door, and so. The doctor, she said, can I stay with her? Because, again, I want to film the process, so I will stay with her. And so the cow, all the other cows were fighting going in the door, and there was a little ramp, and other cows were fighting. But this white cow just went.
George, this is too gruesome for George.
That much?
No,
keep going. It's
okay, I'll give him a hug. It's all right.
So the white cow was like with her human. She's like, oh, okay, I'm fine. So she just walked in like, oh, I'm with my human. Everything is fine. And the doctor's filming this, and she's like internally freaking out now. And the white cow was like, okay. And then she gets to the platform, right? So they have a platform where they start. And then in the last look on the video is white with her cute face, just looking up at the video, completely calm, just looking at her human. Like, oh, hi, where are we going? Like, she's trusting her human. And then they stun her. And the doctor keeps filming, right? Because this is what she wanted. So they stunned her, and then she went in, and then they did the whole process, right? And so they take a chain by one of the legs, and then they haul the cow up so they're upside down so they can cut the neck. And so she filmed all of this, and like the doctor. So the cow went in calmly because she trusted her human. I mean, at that point, that's when I busted into tears. And like, this cow trusted this human being, and this is what happened to her, which happens to many cows. But I didn't see anyone. I saw Ella on that platform. I saw my cow there, and she like these big brown eyes with just like trust in her face. Mm-hmm. And then you see the process of what they do to her body once she's dead and go through these and then afterwards the doctor's interviewing, and she's like, she's like, it was fine until like I realized this cow felt safe with me and she trusted me. And so that's the first time I experienced that, yes, indeed, like these animals are like us. They bond, they trust, they believe, and then we betray them in the very end. She felt like I betrayed this cow I knew for 48 hours.
Yeah.
Huh?
She did betray that cow.
Yeah, and so then we never think about this, right? That again, we call it beef, not a cow, and so like you see this video. I mean, I could send you guys if you want to actually see it because it's not.
Man.
No.
No, I don't want to see it.
Yes,
you should
send
see it.
Totally send it. Definitely send it.
If you, yeah.
But
I mean, if you're gonna eat meat, you
when
should.
people talk about like my humane meat, I'm like, okay, fair enough. Let me show you this video and tell you about Ella and this white cow, and then afterwards, let's talk about humane slaughter because again, the word humane means benevolence, right? Compassion, sparing. So if this cow is, if any animal is looking at you, look with mercy in its eyes, wouldn't the benevolent thing to do is to spare, let it live? Like that's logical, right?
That's what I was hoping. I was holding on there for a happy ending. I was hoping it was going to go on the platform and then the doctor was going to buy the cow outright.
Nope.
No, she couldn't. Even if she wanted to, she couldn't because it was already like in this process and she could not, she couldn't save this cow. So she felt like, okay, I'm going to honor her life by filming the whole process and talking about it and educating people. So I'm going to use her life to educate others on, and again, this was humane meat. This wasn't factory farm meat. This is because a lot of, and I was one of those people too. Towards the end, I'm like, okay, I'm buying humane meat. Like, I know the farm, and then, then it gets to the grocery store. I mean, I kind of like compartmentalize it. But when you see this stuff, so now I see Ella, and now the cows are back. Ella is actually back for a third year, and the first thing I thought is like, she's still alive. Okay, and now she has a baby. So Ella has a baby, and it was like I saw them, and the baby's milking from her mom, Ella. I'm like, oh, so I'm kind of happy to see Ella for a third year because that's kind of long. And now she has a child because normally they take the kids away. So this is a farmer that actually raises, all their animals from birth to slaughter because normally, like the baby cows are taken away to become veal.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So.
Do we want to explain what veal is and where it actually comes from and how that process works?
So veal actually, the whole veal system actually starts from the dairy system. So for dairy cows, only the females are profitable for dairy cows. So if a dairy cow gives birth to a male, he's worthless to a dairy farmer. So he is sold off to become veal. So most of the veal that we eat in the United States are actually baby male dairy cows because they have no profit generation use in dairy farms. And then they're raised in these crates where they can't barely move because they want their muscles like they don't want them tough, so they don't want like muscle because you want like really juicy veal, right? So they keep them in these crates, so they just stay like the pigs. They just stay in this one spot and they can't move. And yeah, I don't think they even live a year.
No, they're under a year. If you ever went to a veal farm, I went to one or two when I was younger because I helped on farms and stuff. Some veal farms will actually put the calves inside these containers where their four legs go down to the containers so they can't move, so that way it's even that juicy. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole point is that it's mostly created again. It goes back to the profit and greed model. That again. So I mean, another issue too is if you consider yourself a feminist, like the entire dairy industry is based on the exploitation of female cows, and then even chickens. If you're a male chicken, you have no use, so you're killed on day one. They literally grind them up.
Like 30 seconds into it, yeah. They sex them and then they throw them into a grinder. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
All picked out, and then it's like, okay, you're a male chick, then you're just ground up. We keep the girls because they can become like. But I mean, it's just based on like, I mean, and that was something actually one of my birdie delegate friends brought up was like, if you consider yourself a feminist, you should not eat dairy or eggs. And I never thought about that. And again, so I started to learn about the business model of and then I was like, oh my God, like I can't, what? And then how they impregnate the cows, the dairy I was like, okay, I can't believe they do this to these dairy cows, even in organic farms. So again, it goes back, and then they say this because it's like we have to do it this way because letting the cows naturally breed could actually hurt the cows.
Yeah.
Because the males are so big that they could, damage the revenue generating property that we have with our dairy cows, because we need her to be constantly pregnant and keep, having babies so that way she can keep producing milk.
Yeah.
Like humans. So imagine we did that to human. So that's why, like, people who are against puppy mills but drink milk and eat cheese, I'm like, okay, do you understand? Like, basically they're doing the same exact things to the animal. So again, that goes back to, you're not an animal lover, you're a pet lover.
And I'll point out too, on a dairy farm, and this was actually a big expose done on Channel 3 here in Cleveland. If you look at the milk, 39% of it is actually pus and blood. And that's a national statistic. It actually is 39% is pus and blood, because the udders become infected, and once they're infected, they bleed. All right? And so that is a true, don't believe me, Google it. 39% of your milk is pus and blood.
Well, just look at what the udder of a cow looks like right before she's about to be milked. Like how big it gets. Like I'm just like, oh my God, how is that not painful? Because the udders get huge.
Yeah.
Loaded with milk and stuff. So again, it's not. This is what happens in factory farms, not your local farmer, again, who's got like 10 cows, and you could actually go milk the cows, right? And they're like, that's different, right? That's a whole nother different thing than what we're talking about. Like the milk you buy in the grocery store is done through this process. And again, it's very mechanical and based on revenue generation. So as a business person, it makes a lot of sense. Because again, it's all about bottom line, low production costs, speed, get it out to market as fast and cheap as possible, right? But again, it's also not based on nutrition. Like, what is nutrition for human beings? Because, remember that time where they used to put the RBGA or RBH growth hormone?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had to eliminate that because, there's actually issues with that. But, they're still like taking antibiotics.
Oh yeah, big time.
But here's the thing with organic dairy. If you have to give a cow, an organic cow, antibiotics, it can no longer be organic milk. So they sell them off to a conventional dairy farm. Because with conventional dairy farms, they can, whatever, in them. Even when we have regulations, the enforcement of these laws is very minimal. It's just like small. And we were talking about like seafood.
Yes, we were.
There we go.
So seafood. So did you guys know that we now have a GMO approved salmon?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
From Japan, is that right?
No, it's here, Aqua Bounty.
Okay.
United States.
Yeah. So they're growing, and then do you know what a factory farm fish farm looks like?
No.
Not really.
Yeah, okay. I can't describe them, but like imagine like out on the the coast, like on the west coast, like primarily up near like the Portland, Washington area or Alaska. So they're these big netted areas like out in the ocean. And they keep these fish like tightly packed like in there. And then there's other ones where they're literally grown in warehouses. So they built these big deep pools in these warehouses and again pack all these fish, as many as they can, into it. So a lot of these fish are literally swimming in their feces and excrements, and then like they're breathing out. And then they also feed them antibiotics. So they also feed them GMO feed and a whole bunch of antibiotics. Because imagine like you got all these fish who can barely move, like crammed together again in their short lives, and then then they take them out and go through the process of killing and processing them. But with the GMO salmon, which our FDA has now approved, it's made by, I believe they call it Aqua Bounty, I think is the company. But here's here's the key thing with that, is that because we have no GMO labeling,
yeah,
you and they don't put the brand name. You know, you just buy your salmon, right? It's like shrink wrapped, and it doesn't. It may say grown in the United States, but that's about it, right? It won't say like this is GMO. So they're not required to put that it's GMO salmon.
Who do we have to thank for the no GMO labeling? Because I'm sure Democrats would like to blame Republicans. Republicans blame whoever. I mean,
the blame is both of them.
Yeah.
So we had in 2016, so GMO labeling. So each of the states started coming up with their own labels.
Yeah.
Their GMO labeling laws. So Vermont came up with the strictest one.
Yeah,
it passed,
I saw
and
that.
their governor signed it into law, and it was going to kick in July of 2016. Well, right before that, then like the big food companies started to freak out, because they're like, if you're General Mills or Kraft, you can't just produce for Vermont, right? Your distribution goes everywhere, and so they're like, well, then we're going to have to put GMO labeling on all our food, because we don't know where it may or may not end up in Vermont or not. And then Connecticut had a law that once 2 states enacted a GMO labeling law, then theirs would kick in. So Vermont was nearby, so they needed just one more state to kick in before their. So then a Democrat actually introduced a bill, and then it got huge bipartisan agreement on this, because basically what happened behind the scene was all this maneuvering happened, and they all basically, this is one of the bills that got through both houses of Congress and signed by Obama within weeks. And one of the things that the main thing was to prevent the federal GMO labeling law that they created would supersede any of the state laws regarding GMO labeling, which goes back to well, wait a minute. So if you're Republicans, why would you support this? Because you're against, right? You're against the federal government telling you, so let the states do it. But then they're like, oh, but in this case, because we're getting lots of money from the big food companies, we're going to go along with this because we don't want our food labeled, because it's, consumers are going to freak out. But the argument has been well, if it's safe, like you keep saying it is, what's the big deal? So, but one of the things in this GMO labeling thing, they're like, okay, they did agree upon a form of labeling. But what it is a QR code. So you put a QR code on the food, and then you as a consumer, to find out anything about it, you have to get your phone, scan it, and then you get all the data. So technically you're like, well, we labeled it, but okay, who scans their food when they're shopping?
Yeah, so you can do this at a restaurant, right?
I'm gonna scan my face now.
Right? Not everybody has a smartphone. Still, people are using old-fashioned flip phones, and so the QR code thing is supposed to give it I think 3 to 5 years. Far more than you realize. Yeah. To kick in, but it did not cover any animals. So all the meat that you're eating. So all chicken eat is GMO soy and corn and synthetic amino acids. That's all they eat. So there's a lot of people who are allergic to soy and corn who can't eat factory farm raised meat because they're that sensitive. Because that's literally, so when I see for example, paleo people, and not to pick on them, but they're all about their meat, but they're like, oh my God, GMOs are the worst thing on the planet. I'm like, do you realize you're eating animals literally built on GMOs? So, what about that? Oh, well, it's okay, they don't convert. It becomes the protein. So that's why they feed them soy, because soy is the cheapest form of cheapest and the highest level of protein to get these chickens to broiler size in 42 days. Okay, 42 days that you're eating this, and like I had a paleo friend, so I started asking him about like, okay, with all your meat, and I asked him, is all your meat like local, organic, raised? And he's like, well, no. Like when I go eat out, it's whatever the restaurant has. So 99% of all the animals raised in our country for food are raised on factory farms. 99%. Like I was shocked, and I didn't believe that. I kept looking around it. It's like 99. And for chickens, it's 99.99% for chickens. The healthy meat. And so I'm just telling him some of this data, and I said, that.
He said not the one that he ate with his son when they were camping.
So the chicken you ate was part of the 0.01.
Right. So I made a difference.
Attaboy, Mike.
Yeah, think about it, like what? 9 billion chickens we raised?
Right.
8 billion? Right? So that
You never know.
So with the paleos, he was just kind of like, okay. Like I'm not, again, is this in alignment with your values? I get your diet thing. I mean, I don't agree with all of it, but I understand it. But like when we bring up all these other issues, like is that in alignment with your values and beliefs in these other areas of your life?
Yeah.
So, then you can, like the meme with the mathematical, like he's starting to think now, and it's like, okay, that's like too much thought. I don't want to think about it, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm not pushing you. That's why I don't push people, because it starts to hit them on their own. It's for a lot of people, it's too much to take in and comprehend.
Yeah, it's overload. Yeah,
it's overwhelming, and it's too much. That's why I believe in a reductionist process, like reduce, cut down versus cut out.
Right.
So
transition.
a question I have then, if I go to the grocery store, because this is something that my wife and I are kind of pride ourselves on. We look for all the foods, whether we go to, I don't know what you have out there in California, Earth Fare, Trader Joe's, or do you have any of those?
Yeah.
Trader Joe's, Whole Foods.
Okay, so we go to these places, right, that are sold as being more healthy in general, and we look for the food or food-like products that have all the gluten-free, GMO-free, free. How much of this stuff can we truly trust, and how much of it is really what it is? I mean, are we being scammed on everything?
That's a really good question. Again, that's where even within the labeling system, so we have like anything that's labeled with the USDA organic, like you can be like, I mean, nothing is 100%, but you could be like 95%, like, because there's always going to be someone who breaks the law and whatever. And again, the regulations, the inspectors, and how they check on this is dropping. And then now there's talk of privatizing this system, which again goes back to, if you're going to privatize it, you're basically letting them self-regulate.
Yeah, what's the benefit? What's the argument for that?
Because it puts more money into it lowers the government like money spending, and it puts more money into business.
All right.
Money.
So they're trying to, and again, like with this tax cut, like we're gonna have almost like a $1.7 trillion deficit.
Yeah.
So now they're gonna look at like, okay, we gotta trim everywhere, and so they're just looking like everywhere. I mean, to cut. I mean, like today, I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter, like one of the things. I mean, this is not really related to food, but they're looking at like Native Americans. Like you're gonna have to get a job now to qualify for Medicaid and stuff like that, right? It's like, wait, what? Now we're going there? Like all this other stuff. Now we're going here, because their argument is like, wait, you're like acknowledge, you're not, because their thing is like, you guys are not governments, you're a race of people. So that it's like, well, wait, okay, wait, so, but now you're by doing that, you're gonna start erasing our history and our place in this country that you guys took from us, by the way.
Right.
So like, but this is again an example of the hypocrisy in the things, again, which is, I mean, where again food gets political. It's like, okay, if you believe in small federal government, but yet you have like all these big programs like government subsidies. The reason meat is so cheap is because it's being heavily subsidized by our government. So you eliminate that, and we will see the true cost of meat, and beef in particular is really expensive, because a lot of these companies too, they get subsidies from their feed and their water. Like some states offer subsidies for the water for these animals, and some of them are literally not. They're getting water for free to feed all these animals. So again, that goes into your political views of what you believe. And I'm like, okay, is that in alignment with you believe? Because it's not. So if we're going to talk about entitlement programs, so okay, great. Let's talk about corporate entitlement programs, and look at the the hundreds of millions of dollars spent in subsidizing the factory farm system, which again we're not looking at, because why? They're red states.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not going to look at that because we need that. They're like, wait a minute, but you're willing to cut money from people's Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid so you can continue your actually, revenue losing businesses that you cannot survive like on your own, because the price and everything that's involved in that. And so it just, like, even the system, and then now we're going to get to 10 billion people like in under 30 years. So how are we going to supply that? And Americans, we already eat 212 pounds of meat a year, average. So that's including the vegans with the heavy meters, right? Averaging it all out, which is like 212 pounds. Like, why do we eat this so much meat? And and whenever I talk to people, I always say Americans eat too much meat, and no one ever argues with me on that. Like, no one says, well, we don't have enough meat, and they usually agree, like, yeah. Because here's the thing, you don't have to eat meat at every meal every day to be healthy.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? We're bombarded with this, like, you gotta eat meat every meal every day to be healthy, and it's like, well, no, you don't. You can have meat like 2 or 3 times a week. And a lot of other countries, they eat like small portions of meat. Yeah. Like every other day or a couple times. Or like in Asian dishes, a lot of times we use small amounts of meat just as seasoning. Yeah. Right? So it's not the main ingredient, it's just used for flavoring, and then there's a lot of vegetables and starches, put in there. But it's not American, our thing is meat is the main thing. Yeah. Yeah. Some vegetables and then some potatoes, or and grains around it, right? But it's like the meat is always the entree.
That's true.
Like in the Flexi 21, I say, well, make the vegetable the entree and make the meat the side dish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, moderation is kind of a lost value in America in general. Mm. So I mean,
fattest country.
If I know some people in my own family where if they got a little bit of meat, it would be worse than having no meat. You know what I mean? They want so much meat.
Yeah. So and even as a meat eater, you're kind of like, that's a lot of meat. Like, and then then we throw a lot of cheese on it. Yeah. Sour cream, right? Then we follow it with like all the dairy on top of it, and then like the cholesterol and saturated fat just like escalates.
It's and then backwards.
People think like chicken is healthier than beef. Chicken breast actually has more cholesterol than 80-20 ground beef per like 100 grams. Wow. So the leading killer of human beings, not just in the United States but on the planet, is heart disease, followed by strokes. Mm. And one of the leading dietary lifestyle causes of that is high cholesterol. Like, we're focused on saturated fat. So chicken has low saturated fat, but it has high cholesterol. And cholesterol is the stuff that like clogs up your arteries and leads to heart disease. So then we have this thing that chicken is healthy, and what happens is, it is in a sense, but then people eat more of it, thus negating like the healthy thing that they think they're doing, eating more chicken versus little or no beef, right? Mm-hmm. So we're like, well, or I just have my beef because I got to have my gourmet burger, right? Because I just love my burger so much. But they don't actually look at like the cholesterol. Yeah, so like 100 grams of chicken breast has 85 milligrams of cholesterol, and 100 grams of 80/20 ground beef is 71.
Yeah.
Oh, that is something.
That's different,
Also,
right? That's like significant.
Yeah, I also referenced that. Do you know that salami has more bacteria and germs on it than the average toilet seat?
What?
Yeah.
Huh?
It's true.
How
That is true. Yeah.
That's not better than the burning car thing. That's right there.
Really good for us Italians.
It's true, though. Yeah.
It's interesting.
But to what you were saying, Stephanie, don't our doctors and our health system know this? Won't they tell us?
No.
No.
No. So first of all, most doctors will tell you this, when they go through medical school, they're required to take 1, maybe 2 nutrition classes.
Mm.
That's it. Like most of them barely know anything about nutrition. And then when you try to then you have like this, now we have this growing association of plant-based doctors and doctors who are like looking at the study. And then there's more and more studies coming out, right? Looking at plant-based diets versus meat-heavy diets and all of that. And there's more and more data that's coming out pointing to that the optimal diet is actually a whole foods plant-based diet. So the farther you go on the whole foods plant-based diet eating, you're like all your health issues start to drop and your longevity starts to extend. So and then there's the one of the biggest things is the blue zones. I don't know if you guys have heard of the blue zones.
Mm-mm.
So with the blue zones, they did a study of who are the oldest living human beings on the planet and where do they live. And so they found these various cities. There's only one area in the United States, and that's Loma Linda. And it's their religion.
Where is that?
In California, down in the south.
Okay.
Huh.
And I forget what their religion is. But in their religion,
Evangelicals.
What's that?
Said evangelical.
No, it's a Christian-based one, and I forget. But
It's
they're not,
every show, Gumby has to get one jab at the evangelicals.
I apologize.
Yeah, but so they looked at these people lived on average to 100. So all these people they looked at what's the common thing? They all ate primarily plant-based diets, and if they ate meat, it was just occasionally fish.
Okay.
No dairy, no eggs, and then maybe chicken or turkey on Thanksgiving, but very high whole food plants, low to no meat. And they had lower rates of heart disease, cancers, Alzheimer's. You just go the list on, and they lived to be 90 to over 100 years old. And they ate beans and rice and lentils, all the things that paleo and keto people are it's not gonna eat, it's bad for you. But I'm okay. See, I look at this we focus on quantity of food, but what about the quality, right? I mean,
yeah.
we in the United States we vilify beans and rice, and as someone Asian, I'm
Thank you.
okay, you cannot tell me rice is bad, okay?
No.
No. Or beans, most everywhere around the world, every culture has some form of rice and bean dish in their menu. It's only in the United States where again, it's gonna make me fat. It's gonna make me get right. It's just and so we get into this thing too where we vilify foods that actually a lot of cultures base a lot of their foods around, and they are very healthy. But you look at the blue zones. Okay, these people are living to be 100, and they're healthy.
Mm.
So so coupled with their diet, they live in communities. They have better connections with other human beings. They're married longer. They have family. They have higher levels of fulfillment in their life, right? So it's a combination thing. But when you just look at their diet, and a lot of it, again, goes to peace and harmony. So maybe with the high plant-based diet is tied to higher levels of peace and harmony because there's no killing of sentient beings. We let all the sentient beings hang out together, right? So there's like higher levels of harmony. And again, that goes back into alignment with what we believe.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I totally get that.
We do a lot of beans and rice in my house. And growing up.
That's actually my favorite dish. I'm infamously famous for my beans and rice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, here's one little tip. So a lot of people, their first argument is like, okay, beans make me gassy. I can't eat it because I fart all the time and I can't stand it, right? So one of the reasons that happens is because a lot of the standard American diet is very low on fiber. Like we over protein and low under fiber. Mm-hmm. So when all of a sudden you're eating a lot of fiber, your body can't handle all that fiber, so it gets gassy. So the thing with beans is that you slowly introduce it, like you eat small amounts and get larger over time. But if you're going to eat a whole can of beans, and your fiber count has been low for a long time, your body's going to be like, oh my God, too much fiber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't even control it. Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds like experience.
Yeah.
What are the tips with beans? Like slowly integrate beans because they are very high fiber. And that's the thing with meat. Huh. Meat has no fiber whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it's everything in moderation. Every way you look at it. Whenever it is that someone has an issue with insulin, you need to stay away from carbs as much as you can. But they say that if you are on a fruitarian diet, that it doesn't so much affect your insulin levels because that's natural sugar that you're getting from it. But it has to do all around with food combining. If you expect to lose weight, it doesn't make sense for you to eat so much carbs and protein together that you separate them. I remember back in the day I'd learned this from Mary Lou Henner. She came out with a book, the lady from Taxi, that it pays to separate your food, that if you're in the process of trying to get back to a normal BMI, that you really have to strive to keep those at separate intervals. And also in order to keep your body healthy, intermittently fasting is very beneficial too. That you try to go for a 12-hour stint without eating. You get 8 hours of sleep, and go for another 4 hours without eating anything. And sometimes you don't eat breakfast right off of the rip. You let your body kind of use up whatever it is that it's storing. That way, it's refreshing itself, and then you only have a certain period in which you eat. But as far as our family, we have a large family, and I know Gumby does as well, and rice and beans and all that. We try to substitute with beans, and some people argue that legumes aren't good for you, that anything from that family doesn't give you the proper nutrition. Some people will say, hey, well, you're not eating protein, you're not getting enough protein, and are you going to suffer from anemia? And there are things, broccoli has tons of protein that you can substitute with, but you just have to be looking for those alternative sources. It doesn't have to just come from meat itself.
Well, here's one thing that people but the thing with beans is the lectins, right? They're like, the lectins are bad, it's going to cause all these these issues, whatever. So lectins disappear when you cook the beans. So nobody eats raw beans. But here's the argument I tell people, like, do you eat raw chicken? No? Why?
Salmonella.
Right? But once you cook it, it's all fine, right? Well, that's the same thing with the beans and the lectins and stuff. So your fears around lectin, it's the same thing about why you don't eat raw chicken. Because there's a bunch of things that you would get because it's raw. But once you cook it, it's all good. So this whole argument with lectins is like, it's a baseless fear because it disappears once you cook it, like when you cook chicken.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument of leaching minerals and vitamins from your body that some beans have, is that part of the lectin or is that something else?
Yeah, I mean, like anything that's tied back to the lectins.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was tied back.
When we look at the nutrition things, like only part of the stories are told, and then you get these books that get really popular, and then they're like, okay, but you're not telling the whole story. But again, like when I bring that up, well, do you eat raw chicken or raw beef? Like, no, because you'll get a bunch of stuff. Well, then why don't we talk about like all the stuff you can get from chicken?
Right.
Because there's actually more health issues you can get from eating chicken, even cooked, than eating beans, right? So the level of fear, and part of that goes back to marketing and selling, because there is incentive for the meat industry to villainize plant-based proteins.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I would say that the human body has an amazing way of healing itself. If we put the right stuff in.
Resilience.
And I asked about the doctors earlier because I feel like our system puts doctors in a precarious situation between a rock and a hard place. Because I believe a lot of them know that maybe going more plant-based or vegan is healthier for us, but they are not allowed to openly promote that as much. And I say that from experience because my wife, there was a time health-wise we were having certain issues, and she was really scared that she could potentially have something really serious. So we went to our doctor that we trusted for years, and the doctor told her, and I'm not going to mention anyone's name, but the doctor told her, said, before we go any further, before we even say the C word, cancer, or anything that could be remotely as serious, I want you to go vegan for 1 month, come back, and then we will take some tests.
Yeah.
But this was kind of under the radar, unofficially, yes.
Wow, that's rare.
It is very rare, she gave birth to I don't know how many kids do I have. A lot of our kids. She's a really great person, and we trust her. But I feel like a lot of times they're put in these positions where they cannot officially promote certain things, but they know. And so we did that, and she did that, and we came back a month later, and it's like, you're good. You're all good.
Yeah. That's 100% correct, because when I contracted gout, the first thing I did was, after researching, I found out that if I went vegan, I would get rid of... Okay, I'm sorry. Plant-based.
Yes,
is that better?
Don't use
is that better? Is that better? Mike's over there. He almost snapped his head off at that point. I went plant-based. Okay, for 30 days, and the gout went away. Yeah. Why? Because the uric acid was out of my system.
Yeah.
So, same thing. Now, I introduced a few things back into my diet. Fish being one of those. I still eat some fish occasionally, although by the end of the year, I'm hoping to even have that out of my system. But that is what cured me of gout, was getting rid of meat and poultry and all that. Mm-hmm. And then transitioning over to that, that's also what changed my entire mind about the meat industry in general.
Yeah.
He didn't listen to his wife.
I started doing all the research. I started doing, and it blew my mind when I started seeing everything that the meat industry contributed to in our country.
Yeah.
So,
well, imagine if we had the support of our health system and our doctors on a large, scale.
But that's if we had a healthcare system. We have a disease management system.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Okay.
No, that was my
touche.
It's not. I mean, that's really what it. Because there's no profit in wellness. In fact,
it's a good point.
Goldman Sachs said there's no profit in disease creates profits for us. Like
that is a whole other podcast, and you are right, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
why. I mean, again, there's no incentive to make food nutritious because they create customers for the disease management system that is profiting off of human suffering.
Yeah,
Like,
agreed.
and the rest of the world looks at us like why don't you guys have universal health care? Like, we don't understand why you have made disease a profit center. Like, it doesn't, only us, like, in the modern world, like, does this, right? Because, and then it's like, well, let's offer universal health care, and then you have these people that, you know, the big companies freak out because they will lose billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And then wellness, if we all start eating more vegetables, like, oh my God, you're taking customers away from us. You know, we can't have that. So, I mean, did you guys know about the checkoff programs? The government checkoff programs?
No.
The checkoff program? Is that like from Star Trek, like checkoff?
Sounds Russian.
No.
Checkoff.
So, the USDA, it's a marketing program under the USDA to promote American agriculture. So, for example, like farmers who raise cows, they have to pay $1 a head for every cow they sell to a meat packer. And then that dollar goes to market and advertise to help promote the eating of beef. Yeah, so it's basically a tax that they pay, but it's a marketing fund, right? So that's why you see, like, meat, you know, big milk does a body good, beef, it's what's for dinner, pork is the other white meat. Those are actually all funded by these government checkoff programs. Wow. So there's huge incentive to promote American agriculture. Now, when you go look to see what the checkoff programs are, they're primarily all meat, dairy, eggs. There's not one checkoff program for vegetables, whole grains, or like starches. It's all, there's the beef council, the egg council, the dairy, you know. So, you know, the Got Milk campaign is one of the largest, most famous government-funded marketing campaigns in our country. So this is another reason why we are brainwashed into wanting to eat meat and dairy and eggs, because our government literally spends tens of millions of dollars every year promoting like all of these foods and spends no money promoting vegetables, grains, legumes. Like, you don't see ads for that. And then the Super Bowl ads, do you ever wonder why there's so many fast food Super Bowl ads?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
when it costs $5 million for 30 seconds, you're like, God, are they selling that much fast food? So, but you notice that a lot of their menus all have bacon, beef, cheese, mushroom, burgers. Yeah. They all do. Because they're getting money from the Mushroom Council, the Dairy Council, the Beef Council, and the Pork Council.
Wait, are mushrooms bad too?
There's a Mushroom Council.
No, mushrooms are fine, but they have a checkoff program.
Oh wow.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
We promote, but that's why. So that's why all the menus have some form of beef, pork, dairy, mushroom, like in it, because of these. They get money. So they literally get money.
The only vegetable. To
put it in. So that's why you don't see veggie burgers, because they don't get any subsidy money for veggie burgers.
Huh. Do you think there's any trend recently? I think of one of the basketball players that came to mind recently. That used to be here in Cleveland. His name is Kyrie Irving, who recently came out and promoted being a vegan, a plant-based diet.
And a flat earther.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think he retracted that statement.
But you know what? I mean, there's always associations with anyone who goes against anything that, you know, they're tied as crazy people at first, but
actually a lot of pro athletes are going more plant-based now, and primarily in basketball.
Exactly. That's where I was going, because he was immediately associated as someone who was crazy. And, you know, well, his plant-based diet, you know, if that's anything like the whole flat earth thing, then it must be bad.
Yeah, no, there was actually New York Times, I think it was New York Times or Washington Post, did a big article on the trend of veganism among NBA players. Yeah. Because it's becoming a trend with them now.
Right.
And here's the thing, because on these diets, they're getting slimmer and they're able to go faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why they're like, wait a minute, like, you're doing better now. What are you doing? It's like, I'm eating plant-based. So, okay. So again, to them, it's like a trend to at their performance. So they're willing to try it to see if they get better because they see their peers getting better. But then we have like Laird Hamilton, like the top, the driver, the racing,
NASCAR?
Yeah. All right. I think he's international, right?
You guys are way more white than me.
He went plant-based, and he started winning more of these big, like, trophies.
Clearer thinking.
Wow.
He was like, oh yeah, because the going plant-based helped me get more clarity. It helped me slim down a bit, which actually helped, with stuff. But like clarity is a big thing that a lot of them get, like this haze or fuzziness, like they don't have anymore. They feel lighter, but then they got to figure out, like, okay, but when you're an athlete, you still have to have high levels of protein, right? So like, how do you get 100 grams from plant-based sources? To keep up with that. And so, but like NFL players are now looking at it. So there's a new movie coming out called The Game Changers that focuses primarily on male athletes. And it's produced by James Cameron, Terminator guy.
Yeah.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger is in it too. So Arnold went plant-based recently as well.
Really?
He's for promoting,
I knew he'd be back.
Arnold is back. And this month on Muscle and Fitness magazine, one of the top bodybuilding magazines, their May cover model is a professional vegan bodybuilder. So I posted it on my wall, and I'm like, okay, you tell me this guy's not getting enough protein, because like, okay, look at that, right? Yeah, but there's like this new like thing of like vegan body. I'm fascinated with the vegan bodybuilders because they bust all the myths. They're like, and they're doing it without steroids too, right? So you look at these guys, and you're like, what are they doing? And they're like big, and they're, they don't look like distorted like the steroid guys, but you're like, wow, you're able to get this ripped just eating. I mean, again, look at Muscle and Fitness magazine. Look at the cover. Look at that guy. I'm just like. And he's 28 years old. He's never eaten meat.
Well, it just goes back to the old adage of everyone wants to be as strong as the ox, but the ox is vegan.
Yeah, or like cows, elephant, like the strongest animals on the planet are all plant-based.
I never said about gorillas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They eat bugs.
Why are we obsessed with protein? Part of our obsession with protein are these checkoff programs.
Yeah, I agree. If you want to hang out for a second, Stephanie, we're going to call the end of the program right now.
Okay.
So,
wow, we've been going a while.
Yeah, we have. So if you want to hang out for a second, we are going to call it here. Everyone is going to call it good night.
So long, everybody.
Peace out.
Adios.
Toodaloo.
Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and anywhere else you can find social media, or at BibleOverBrews.com.
There's nothing taboo over brew.
Thank you for having me.